folks, we are back. We are the i12GIA folks. Maybe you remember us from Real Talk and a podcast a while ago. We disappeared for a bit because the fat lady sang and she fell over on Father Guido's head, and then he was unconscious for a while. But now we're back, though. So we're going to keep going. We're going to educate and entertain. We're doing things a little bit differently now. We're not going to do politics. I don't want to hear no politics, none of that nonsense. If I hear the word politic come out of anybody's mouth, I'm going to hit the mute button.
Yep.
Okay? And that includes guests. So no politics of any kind whatsoever. We're not talking about that anymore. What we are talking about, though, is important stuff. And tonight we're going to be covering church violence and synagogue violence here in the U.S. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of attacks on Christianity. We all know what the Jewish situation is like, which is horrific the world over right now. So we will be discussing that this evening. We have myself, Instructor Fogg. I'm still here from around last time. We have Nomad there. He's still here from the last time. And we have what used to be the specialist, but for some reason he's decided that his new name is Father Guido Sarducci. So he's going to start us off, Father Guido. Would you like to bless us with your expertise on church violence?
I'm a Jew, but I don't know. I'll have to defer to my Jewish brother. But anyway, house of worship shootings. The first, believe it or not, the first shooting in a house of worship in the modern day era occurred in 1980 during a Sunday service at the First Baptist Church in Deerfield, Texas. 5 people were killed and 10 others were injured. The shooting was prompted by revenge involving a domestic violence, but it's only gotten worse over time. You know, with the hate and discontent for Christians, with the hate and discontent for Jews like Nomad and I, and the list just goes on and on and on. The most recent one we were just talking about before we went on the air happened, I believe you said in Michigan, where the guy had the news report that I heard, he had 30 round magazines going and shooting, and somebody come in the parking lot and saw him and ran him over, and then the church security team came out and shot and killed him. So
Okay.
Let's go from there.
Makes sense to me. I'm a big supporter of the concept of violence of action. I think when you see something like that, it's appropriate to take violence action. And I say running over some guy with a 4,000-pound car is pretty violent. Do you guys think? What do you think about the prosecutorial issues with that? Is anybody going to have a problem?
Okay, Nomad, go ahead, and then I'll go after you.
I think it's a complete waste of time. I think it's going to be politically motivated in the sense that it won't be to do with what the natural sense of justice is. It'll be more about somebody being able to bolster up their base for the upcoming House elections later on. Enough on that.
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to be the devil's advocate here. I'm going to say once a threat is neutralized, it's supposed to end there. So convince me that running somebody over with a 4,000 or a 6,000 pound pickup truck is not going to neutralize them.
Is not going to neutralize him? What do you mean? What do you mean? Justify that?
Well, I mean, what was his capacity to shoot after he got ran over by a pickup truck?
Oh, I see. So you're questioning the security guard who went up and shot him again.
Well, that's like doing a kill shot on somebody, right? I'm just trying to play the devil's advocate. The guy deserved what he got. Don't get me wrong.
Well, yeah. I get it.
I'm just looking at it from a liberal standpoint. You know.
Yeah.
At what point was the guy incapacitated? When he was ran over by the pickup truck, or when he was shot multiple times by the church security team member?
What do we know what his status was afterwards?
I haven't heard.
There's the question. There's the question.
I mean, from a legal standpoint, yeah, you kind of got to know that kind of thing. I meant okay. I mentioned violence of action earlier. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys, our listeners, assuming we even have any, because this is our first show, but maybe we do. You never know. Violence of action is described as the unrestricted use of speed, strength, speed, and aggression to overwhelm an opponent and quickly gain dominance. It emphasizes a forceful and decisive approach to ending a conflict swiftly and effectively. My point being, running over somebody with a 4,000-pound car is going to pretty much end that conflict swiftly and effectively. But show is shooting him in the head multiple times too, after being run over by a car. So, it's like apples and oranges, or not even apples. It's more like apples and grapefruits or something. But yeah.
So I did a class with Dan Burrito on this several years ago, and Aaron Cohen was one of my COs and one of my teachers, and he was always like, he always emphasized the kill shot. So the Israelis, we would rush people, we would push people out of the way, we'd get to our target, and would fire, and then after they were down, would put one right in the brain stem in case he had a dead man switch, he couldn't move. You
We
know,
used to do an actual eye bump.
but you
Was the-
can't do that here in the United States. So I showed people the technique, but I emphasized don't do it. How does that compare to running over somebody with a truck and then shooting them? That's the question I'm asking, and that's what I'm
okay. If my perspective is when the threat is down, only when it's neutralized. And you don't know what he may have had remotely, not just by way of a dead man switch, but maybe already activated inside in the truck waiting. That if his fail safe was that if he fails to shoot, he's going to blow the place up. That's why you send in bomb techs and EOD in to check a vehicle in a house of any suspect who's involved with anything. Like the very why a person is even a suspect when you see them live doing it. You, you, that guy's intentions was violence of action. It was met with equal and overwhelming force.
Yeah.
As regards after the point where he's actually physically no longer a threat, that's for the judicial to decide on. I know if I had been there, I would make sure he's not moving, and I would keep the weapons away from him as much, and evacuate the area. For me, you can solve church houses of worship shootings with a couple of steps, and it's not done enough. And the reason I'm bringing into question to this is the quality of church security teams, and I have an issue with that. Just because you're former law enforcement or current law enforcement doesn't mean that you're any more qualified than anybody else. Majority of cops have never been shot at. They shoot 51 rounds a year, one time, to qualify to carry a weapon in public. If you have a strategy, a plan, firehouses of worship, where you have people actively monitoring the car park, a meet and greet, and an assessment, if you can see, you can assess, you can plan accordingly. So having somebody in the parking lot all the time while services are getting ready to start up and as people are arriving is the first thing. Second thing is, have a response to the point where you can isolate the place and lock it down very quickly. So communication is the issue. And then thirdly, most churches, and I'm 100% sure on this, but most churches in the States, depending upon the state statutes that you're operating in and where you're at, your private security team is nothing more than citizens having concealed weapons permits. In Florida, you have to have a G license to have armed security, but you can only use that weapon, even as a CCW, to stop the commission of a felony. So someone did stop the commission of a felony. But your point is, right, that if the threat is down, and the threat is down, doesn't mean the threat's gone. Because the next thing you do is get the hell out of Dodge until more resources come in who can make an actual make a proper determination of it. Overseas, houses of worship are using UAVs, drone technology, to monitor from inside, to cost down on manpower. And the quality of training that church groups get is crap. It's crap. It's cops training other cops who are either fat, overweight, or at the end of their career. Never been shot at. You never find a former SWAT guy involved in a church team. It's somebody who's basically being a bureaucratic type of law enforcement guy. He's stuck in there in the bed bug and the blanket, and he's not done much. That doesn't make him an expert.
In other words, he worked a midnight shift and he was a dumpster diver for donuts.
He was a pizzeria champion, yeah.
Pizzeria champ. Yeah, I would expand. On what all you all are talking about. With you don't know if that's the only threat. It's very possible that
you don't. All I'm saying is, all I'm trying to hop on is the optics. That's all.
Yeah, I agree. Now, go ahead, Nomad.
The only optics that matter are through the reticle or through a proper side picture.
Mm-hmm.
That's my point.
Exactly. True. Yeah. Okay, Father G. Doesn't i12GIA have something to address this topic?
Yeah. So I had gone and about 2 years ago, I had put together a very nice package on. It was called "Protect His House." And I reached out to Catholic churches. I'm a Jew. I paid particular attention to synagogues. Mm-hmm. And I got absolutely zero responses.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the willingness to accept what I was teaching. Anyway, so then I go to this Shabbat, which is one of the places that I had sent literature to and called. And my first time there, I get surrounded by church security. They all had guns.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't know. I just don't know how legitimate and how resourceful and how effective these people are.
Most churches are a 501c tax-free type of entity. So, say the hospital security is basically private security employed by the hospital. So they're basically they're no different than armed security in the retail end of it. There are unique statutes cover the use of firearms in protection of people, and property can be replaced. People cannot. So that's the overriding thing. So a guy who spent his life at university.
So,
or a police academic experience as a guy who is dealing with license, having an armed license in the project somewhere in any large city. So the response to the legal side of it, most church security companies, they're never be prosecuted, but it needs to be addressed legally. There's an option civil action under law.
Okay.
So retail armed security today.
Damages. I think. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. He's going to refresh.
Stand by.
Oh. So retail armed security today, as far as I'm concerned, is they would prefer you don't use any firepower on anybody because they get insurance to protect their money, but they haven't got insurance to pay out liability claims.
Correct.
If you squeeze a round off, That's my experience with, private security.
Yeah.
What's the answer to this? I mean, we all know that security guards in general are paid nothing basically, and I think the church security folks always all volunteer their time too.
They're all volunteer, but let's not escape what we're talking about. Since the mid-2000s, mass shootings in churches, temples, and synagogues, and as much as I hate to say it, mosques, that's a nasty word in my dictionary, have been more frequent and have been committed by perpetrators with a history of racism, anti-Semitism, anti-Christianity, and Islamophobia. with ties to white supremacist groups and neo Nazis. Anybody care to comment on that?
There is an assortment of reasons for that, I think. Maybe the fringe element sees churches as an easy target. And plus, they're making a statement of some kind. I think there's a religious component. There's also a non-religious component. There are so many different atheists, for example, that might want to attack a church for whatever reason.
All right,
There's revenge. There's a bunch of stuff.
All right, let me throw a curveball at you.
Okay.
From 1996 to 2000, only 1% of mass shootings were motivated by religious hate.
Really? Okay.
After that, the number escalated. From 2000 to 2014, the number jumped from 1% to 9% of mass shootings involve religious hate. That's only a difference of 8 percentage points.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, the number jumped to 17% between 2018 and 2020. So 17% of church shootings. That is not a large number by any stretch of the imagination.
No, it isn't.
So, do you think maybe that factors in why they're not taking this seriously?
That's very possible, yeah.
I think the issue is how you compute and estimate and classify what we call a mass shooting. A mass shooting involves three people, one of which can be the shooter. So if you have two victims of a mass shooting and one other guy is the shooter, that's a mass shooting. So the
Yep.
Uniform Crime Index that the feds use, which is basically the crimes that are reported by police agencies, law enforcement agencies, to the feds, to the FBI, is the basis of where these crime figures come from. Up to recent times, depending upon which side of the carpet you were on in Congress, you could use Health and Human Services or the CDC and have gun violence as an actual as a disease almost. So it was funded accordingly, keeping the politics out of it now. So here's the bottom line. Churches are all about making money because otherwise they wouldn't be a 501c. You wouldn't have a pastor or a reverend having the best and funniest of gear, appealing, and if you're making that amount of money and you get money which is tax free, it's incumbent upon you to figure out the risk. We are in a war footing right now. Use some primary markers on events in this country. Okay, let's go. The Atlanta bombing, the underground car park bombing pre 9/11, 9/11. We had Oklahoma. We've had the Sandy Hook thing. We had everything. So here's the bottom line. The basis of how we report crime and constitute and classify what constitutes an actual gun crime is political. So the funding for both sides of that argument, pro and anti-gun, also generates that vacuum which allows these things to happen. Considering the population of the US, we have very, very, very little mass shootings in the true sense of the word. Because if the shooter's involved as the victim, three people or more, there's more domestic gun violence and gang violence in inner cities in the Midwest. So the bottom line is there's more shootings done outside of houses of worship that go unreported than those that are there because it carries the optics as the padre said. The optics is that it's inflammatory. And if you inflame a point of view, you increase funding.
I
Oh,
agree.
that's
No,
interesting.
man, good point. So, where do you think that number came from that you come up with? You'll be shocked to learn, unless you already know the answer.
The number as regards to where the figures came out of, probably from the CDC.
The numbers that what it takes to constitute a mass shooting. You know, you
Um,
mentioned it.
I'm sure it's the CDC has a lot to do with it.
Congress came up with that number.
And that's the same body,
Yeah.
right? A group of guerrillas is called a Congress too, okay? And basically, right, They're the same people who came up with gun control measures and also came up with stuff to counter COVID. And so don't get me started on that. But what I'm just saying is that I have no confidence in those individuals because they're all career guys. Some of them have been doing it 30, 40 years and they don't even sign their own name. I better stop myself, so I better put my tape on.
Anybody remember a guy named Barry Scheck?
Very sick.
He was a
Sounds
fine
familiar.
lawyer.
All right,
He,
go on.
he was one of OJ's lawyers.
Okay, yeah. He was, yeah.
Right. So he ran the Project Violence.
Mhm.
And anyway, Project Violence classifies Western mass shooters in two distinct groups. Those motivated by anti-Semitism and those motivated by Islamophobia or anti-Christianity, who were not members of a congregation where they committed their crime, and those motivated by domestic issues whose spouse, girlfriend, or other family member belonged to the congregation where the attack occurred. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that in 2018, 11 Jews attending services at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, were fatally shot by white supremacists with a history of anti-Semitism. So the problem has some roots that run well below the surface, I think.
Mhm.
Anybody care to add or dispute me or?
Mm. My own belief on that is that you can use facts, statistics, and data to support your argument in any way. I'm trying to stay in the middle of this thing here right now. Um, the shooter was not a victim. The shooter showed intent, right? There's the actus rea and the mens rea under law, as we know, right? So the action and the motivation behind it. He came into that environment with the full intention of hurting, harming, or killing people. So the bottom line is that he was not coming there to worship. He was coming there to destroy. So the level of force that he met, here's the question that should be asked. What did the local police or sheriff do in the fact that we're in a time right now? This is before the US bombed Iran. That we were told there's domestic terrorism threats within here, what they call HVE, homegrown violent extremists, which used to be called domestic terrorists. No one's had the balls to call out gang warfare, gang violence, or anybody who has a propensity for violence, right?
Mhm.
And who abuses the First Amendment in order to violently express themselves and cause damage to people and property. And that's not just talking about government property. I'm not talking about LA now. So when I'm coming to all this point is this: our politicians need to grow a set of kahunas and call things as they are. Because I tell you what, if I had been in that car park and I saw somebody coming up and and going on what I've read and what I've seen on the video side of it, someone coming up and has weaponry with them, the first thing you do is communicate and then isolate this individual, and you have to engage the threat. But legally, what comes in? The vicarious liability comes into it. What is the church's plan if one of their church team shoots somebody?
Mhm.
There's deafening silence. You've heard nothing from any house of worship, any denomination. They've never answered that question because the insurance that they have is the basic level of general liability insurance,
That's what
and they
we were
hope it goes away.
that's what Chet and I were talking about when you were refreshing. Commercial establishments don't want armed security personnel to be shooting anybody because their money's insured,
Hmm.
okay? But they're not insured for the liability that goes along with you shooting them. And in
Hmm.
most states, as a firearms instructor, I can't in good conscience tell somebody you have a right to shoot somebody to defend property because you don't.
You don't. You don't.
You
You
don't.
don't. You don't. You
No,
don't.
definitely not. Definitely not. Um, hmm. How would
Like
that? How and what? How would that apply to a church though? About concerning property?
A church is a place of business as well as a place of worship.
Yeah.
It has to make it. If you make a tax return, you're a business.
Right.
That's how I
Right.
understand things. I don't care what you package it as, right?
Mhm.
Um, Grey Bull, that fantastic organization that went over
Mhm.
from Florida and brought back those people from Israel, and DeSantis did his thing.
Mhm.
Um, They're a 501c.
Mhm.
They're no different than a bunch of concerned citizens with an equal philosophy, have some specialist background, but ultimately did it off their own back. So they're self-funded, self-aware, and the government is aware of what they do, but they do this because they don't want to be sucked into it. Whether you're red, white, and blue, or red or blue, or pink, it doesn't matter a damn. Until you start costing somebody in the pocket, nobody gives a crap about it. And I think every minister, every church, every place of worship that has a security team has to face the consequences of what are we going to do if we have to engage, because you're relying upon the sovereign immunity of off-duty law enforcement generally, who compose most security teams. And you can't train somebody to act like a cop when you're not a cop yourself on duty. The example of that, I'm going to say something inflammatory right now. The example of that was Trayvon Martin, trained, right? The, I'll keep his name out of it. The guy who shot Trayvon Martin was trained by an off-duty cop. So they taught him law enforcement type mentality to a civilian. And look what that launched. Look what that launched. So what I'm saying is that you can easily hijack someone. Churches need to be called out for what they are. They're businesses, and they're selling an illusion. They're selling a dream. They're selling something. But if you step out of someone's premises, you have to have general liability insurance. If I'm inside in a bank and the bank has been robbed, I will get paid out by the bank as a customer because I was stressed and freaked out. They'll pay 25, 30 grand in a heartbeat, because they're not going to go through the courts and pay $250,000. They'll pay something so you go away. That's it. Every one of those people that was in the vicinity of that shooting has the right under law to sue that church and say, you failed me because you didn't put adequate security in place. I have an expectation to be safe no matter where I go. You're responsible for your own safety. That's the other thing. Anti-gun guys, the Democrats just found out when some of theirs got shot. All of a sudden, you're relying upon a uniform. Uniforms have to stay outside a private residence. They can't be inside unless you're of a certain caliber of individual within the government or of importance. So none of this stuff actually matters. It doesn't matter until someone is actually sued. A house of worship needs to be sued to clarify that. That's what I think needs to happen.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Excellent.
let me bring this. I get two other examples of idiocy.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Spring, Texas, in 2017, 26 people, half of them children, one of them were unborn, were killed in a mass shooting, one of the deadliest in modern Texas history, believed to have been prompted by a domestic dispute. Okay, a family feud. So that's issue number one. Issue number two. Okay, I'm manager of a casino security property until next week. Then I'm all done. But we've had three. Last night they had a shooting in the vicinity of the casino. 2 people were shot by a guy in the back of a moving car. Last week, one of my guys disarmed a gangbanger coming in with a gun. Month ago, we had a shooting 2 streets from the casino. If I would have run the tapes back, I guarantee I would find the shooter inside my building. Last night when I talked to my boss, I asked him if the guys could wear body armor, and he said no. The appearance wouldn't look good. So that's the amount of stupidity that we're dealing with when we deal with issues like this. It's off the chart. It really is.
I don't get it either. The whole private security industry has some major problems, and optics and everything else involved.
Well, let's forget private security. I've asked in the past to hire police details, and they don't want to hire them because they're too expensive.
Sure.
You know?
But respectfully, you're still, and you're right, you're correct, but you're also going on the premise that because a guy is employed by a sheriff's department or a local PD, that he's more qualified. No, he's not more qualified. You just get a response faster because he's already on scene, and because you might have a uniform car outside the door and a physical presence. You see it every weekend at churches all over the country. Cops are hired out for 2 and 3 hours to do traffic duty, right? And those guys on traffic duty are only for the churches and house of worship going in and going out. They can't respond to anything because they're paid for and bought for by the church just to allow egress in and out of the church parking lot. So parking and traffic movement is more important than crime prevention. Most CCTV systems are only utilized after the event has already happened. They never proactively look at them. They only use them for evidentiary basis only. So from that point of view, camera systems, so the bad guys already know that we are intellectually lazy and not fully committed to safety. We're not committed to safety at all.
Right.
So
what?
you know?
So, if I'm understanding you correctly, that yes, what I'm hearing you say is everybody's responsible for themselves.
Correct. That's what you have the Second Amendment for. That's what the Second Amendment is for.
I'm glad you brought that up because, like, a house of worship shooter is described by the Violence Project, Barry Scheck, as a suicidal, I emphasize suicidal white male, and I hate to throw the term white male because that includes, white male, in his 40s, who uses a handgun in a Christian church. Almost half of them were motivated by religious hate, and half knew at least one of their victims. 27% of the perpetrators in the house of worship shootings expressed racism towards people of color. 46% were motivated by religious hate, which includes anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and anti-church, Christianity, and Christians. 18% had broken up or separated from their spouses or partners. So that says to me, and I can agree with Nomad. Those numbers say to me, hey, you know what? You go to church, bring a gun with you because you're responsible for your own safety and
There you and there you have it. There you have it. Just before we go into a break, let me say this to you. I'm going to say something that is probably not popular, but I'm going to say it because I believe in it. My First Amendment is this: I say what I want because I believe in it. Right?
Yeah.
I don't give a rat's ass whether somebody's autistic or has a mental problem. If they point a weapon at me, I'm looking after my safety. I'm putting him down until that threat goes, and I'll take the consequences of it. Because what would a reasonable person expect? I don't have the opportunity nor the time to figure out what's going on with that guy's head. A bad guy can have a good day, and a good guy can have a bad day. So if a guy comes already with the motivation and the investigation to crime can take years and take as long as it wants. The crime scene can go from here to the fucking moon.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is this: if someone points a gun at me, and I have the ability to defend myself through the Second Amendment and through my state statutes allow me to do so, I'm going to do so. If I'm prohibited from carrying a weapon in certain places like courthouses and bars and restaurants and whatever, that's fair enough. But that means that there's a duty of care upon those institutions to have additional security to protect my safety when I can't fully utilize my Second Amendment to protect my safety. If I can't carry a gun into a federal building, the federal security when it's open, the people need to have the elevated level to protect me as a citizen and as a customer or whatever you want to call me of that facility. So what I'm saying is that the duty of care, the vicarious liability, the guilty by association. I don't give a rat's ass about optics, man. If someone points something at me and I think and I believe at that time that they're going to do me harm, I am reasonable. I'm reasonable to say I'll try and get out of there if I can. And but I don't have the right, I don't have need to walk away under the castle doctrine. I will not be stupid, but I will try and take cover before I engage. If the threat still remains there and the threat is within my immediate reach, if it's 25 yards, he's not a threat to me.
Yeah.
If he's 5 yards from me, he's a threat to me. If he's 3 feet from me, he's a threat to me. So I will use a weapon of opportunity, like a truck, to put somebody down. Because he can easily survive and be crippled and be able to serve a fucking prison sentence. But if he points a gun at me, I don't give a shit about his intellectual ability or lack of. I'm putting him down. Because I'm going to go home to mine.
Exactly.
Break
Yep.
time. Break time.
Break time. We're going to take a quick break here, folks. We will be back shortly, so stick around if there's anybody out there listening to us. It's i12GIA, the Ops Report. Okay, well, we are back. I think we still have everybody here. i12GIA, the ops report. We're having a rather interesting discussion tonight on violence in house of warships and how to manage and how to mitigate it. A little bit of the history of that. So, where is everybody? There we
I'm
go.
He's
back.
right there. Yeah,
There's,
he
there's
needs to clean.
Father
He needs to
G.
clean his fan.
He does, yes, yeah.
You got a fetish for my fan. Stay away from my fan.
A fan fetish. Da, da, da.
Fan fetish.
All right, fellas, what do you want to do next?
Can I go back to some stuff?
Yeah.
Of course you can.
Okay, I just checked something. If I can, you can bear with me on this here.
Sure.
The duty of care, premises liability on duty of care, standard obligation. They should have reasonable care to all lawful visitors and invitees on their premises. They have to adhere to the foreseeability of harm from third-party criminal activity. So they have under law, they got to have knowledge of and be able to have knowledge of the lessons from prior incidents, not just in their own area, but other areas or in surrounding areas. The nature of activities that they have on their premises invites an actual harm. But the big one is the negligence claims. And the elements of that, of the negligence claim, of the duty establishing a place of worship has a right and has an obligation to protect visitors. And the breach of duty primarily shows that they didn't fail to take reasonable precautions, and then the breach itself then to actual harm suffered. So if you're in a state that has permitless carry, some states allow individuals to carry firearms like Alaska or Missouri, right? Concealed carry permits are required in other states like New York and California. I'll be surprised. And some states prohibit firearms in places of worship unless they're given explicit permission, like Louisiana. But you're allowed to carry a firearm in place of worship. So it depends on your state, effectively, right? The place of worship has the right to prohibit or allow weapons in their houses of worship, and Texas and Florida are two places that I know that. So primarily, not just posting a notice, but the legal obligations, forgive me, the legal obligations upon houses of worship, they've never been called out on it. They've never had to pay out on it. If they have it, they've kept it quiet. Do you remember when Joel Osteen's church got attacked by
Yeah.
a lady that came in, and it's live on camera, and you see him. Once she was engaged, the threat was so far because the building is so big. No lessons have been learned. If law enforcement fails to learn lessons from inaction and delay in school shootings, how the hell do you think a bunch of private citizens attending a place of worship are going to do any better?
Yeah, good point.
So what I'm coming to is that I'm not going to be popular at houses of worship because they're not popular with me. They don't take my safety seriously. The fact that I have to take care of myself, and that's my point. That's my point. Call out these for what they are: money-making enterprises under the guise of religion. Religion is man-made but God-given. So basically, the threats come from the man side of it. So you must have reasonable precautions to stop that. If you know there's a chance of something happening, you need an insurance policy or a freaking parachute. So as regards the body armor side of it, body armor is classed as safety equipment, personal protective equipment. How you describe body armor can influence an insurance underwriter or not. When I was doing some other stuff, working for something, we were never close protection, executive protection agents. We were PRMs, personal risk managers, is what we were. And we just happened to be armed.
Okay. That's
So
interesting.
that's where the thing is. If you're going to take the money out of a pastor's couple of grand, save Jesus and send me $1,000 today, and you can be saved faster. It's no different than the plenary indulgences that the Catholic Church tried to impose upon people in the Middle Ages. No difference, none whatsoever.
I agree.
Yep.
My God, we agree.
Let's do a little Q&A.
Okay.
Shooting locations.
Ha,
Who are you gonna call? And I'm not gonna say Ghostbusters either. Okay.
you just did.
Workplace. Who are you gonna call?
911.
Yeah, no one. Please.
So, okay, so you call the police. How long does it take them to get there?
It depends on the look.
Well,
Depends on the look.
yeah.
Well, okay, let me go to say, for the sake of the conversation, 10 minutes.
Yeah,
Okay.
an average. Yeah.
Then they know what they're getting into. How long do you think it's going to take them to set up before they make entry?
Mm-hmm.
Half hour, 45 minutes?
Yeah, probably.
So, how many people do you think are going to die in that amount of time? Because, Chet, you know as well as I do for keeping safe, time to target is 10 minutes, right?
Right.
So, once an active shooter pulls into your parking lot, gets out, he's armed, he cocks that, he cocks that rifle or pistol.
Charge and handling.
You got 10 minutes to live. All right. Let's move on to the next one. The next one is a chimpanzee could get it. K-12 to school. That'd be an SRO. If he's not having coffee or, banging one of the teachers in the closet, I guess. College or universities. Same thing. You get campus police. Next one, retail. Local law enforcement.
Well, yeah, or well, secure whatever the store security, like a mall, for example. I got a question for you though, and
Go.
well, here, this is a good question. Okay, what's the protocol for? Because we know for school shooters now, active threats in schools or active shooters, it's pretty much everybody now is going direct to threat, right?
Yeah.
And stabilizing as soon as possible. Does that same protocol apply to churches?
No,
No.
Why?
because a church is a local government or state funded or federally funded building, right? A church
Okay.
is not. A church is a private enterprise. There's the difference. It's for
And-
profit. It's for profit. It says it's non-profit, but it is for profit because the admin
Right.
cost of a church. I'm not anti-church. I'm anti-BS when it comes to posing as a church when you're a freaking business. When you
Right.
try and get around your responsibility by saying God will protect us. I tell you what, even God has archangels for a flipping reason.
Yeah.
and I'll go you one better than that. I don't
Oh.
think that I don't think that they are in a position to tell people to be going out and shooting. I really agree with Nomad on this. That church security is like it's like that song by Pink Floyd, "Comfortably Numb." That's all it is.
Yeah.
Perfect. Great song. Great
It's an
song.
It's an illusion.
Listen, to add to your point, sorry, Fog. Here's the thing: if you most states have the equivalent of a Good Samaritan Act, where you act in good faith and attend somebody giving them first aid or life-saving measures or try and stabilize them, you're not going to be sued because you're acting in good faith. You don't know whether they got a DNR, you don't know whether they got an advance directive, you don't know what they've got. You're doing your best to sustain them until afterwards, until more qualified people come in. So basic life-saving is what you're looking to do to stabilize and get them transported to somewhere where they can be assessed properly, and then other things come into it. So if I'm fire trained, and my fire training consisted of me using an extinguisher, using the pass method, pull the pin and sweep it from side to side against a trash can inside a controlled environment. And then I'm fire trained, okay? Now, then I come across the scene of an accident, I have a first aid kit up, right? And I said, I'm going to help. I take it upon myself. I knowingly, willfully, with intent, know what I'm stepping into. But I know I'm protected by some sort of law. There's not enough laws on the books to protect church security. So church security, here's the thing. Here's what I am. I'm going to have a weapon to protect me and anybody else in the commission to stop a commission of a felony. But I have nothing else other than the hope that someone's going to support me. That guy who held that crazy guy on the train, on the tube, on the subway in New York, and they put him into a hold, that Marine, and they put him through the thing. He acted in good faith to protect himself and other people around him. The first thing people did was pull out their cell phone and have an Instagram moment or a Facebook moment. No one called 911. So what I'm saying is church security, you are stupid if you volunteer for church security because you're taking upon yourself. You could deprive yourself of your family and your livelihood and your liberty by acting in good faith because the church that supports you, that you support and put money into every Sunday or every Friday, or every Saturday, it doesn't matter a damn. They're not going to support you when you're going to be the cause of them. What you'll hear is silence and a banging door. Nobody is going to do it because insurance is nothing but bookies and suits.
Yep.
Probability of something happening. That's all it is.
Ponzi
So-
schemes. Yep.
Yeah,
They're
so-
running. They're taking your money, assuming that you're not going to need them, and you're paying them, assuming you are going to need them.
Okay, staying along those same lines, I got another question for you. Now, I don't want to violate OPSEC here because you guys know more about this than I do. But does that same thing apply to synagogues also? Do you go direct to threat or no? Or don't answer if it's an issue.
Run that by me again.
Okay. We said that in as far as houses of worship go, they're not going to go direct to threat because they're considered businesses. What about synagogues? Does that apply to them also?
So
Or
for
the
the
same
long
concept?
Jews since World War II, since the World War II, the Nazis, Jews have been persecuted. We lost 6 million Jews in the 40s, and so they swore that would never happen again. So, like the synagogue that I go to, there's always two armed personnel at all times,
Okay. And that was the end.
and they're ready to engage.
Okay.
Okay,
No matter.
flip the coin. Flip the coin. I hear what you're saying, Padre, and you're 100% right. Immediately after 9/11, every Muslim was afraid of getting attacked on a subway, on a street, on a highway. If he or she wore something that resembled something involving Islam, Islamophobia was at the point of where people were basically taking off the hijab and blending in, right? Any Irish guy who was living in Ireland or the UK in the 70s and 80s did the same thing. You shut your mouth, you stayed away from the Irish community because but the IRA, being Irish, were bombing British and Irish targets. So your accent could be the cause of it. In fact, the Prevention of Terrorism Act in 1972 in the UK was designed specifically so that Irish people coming from Ireland will go through a certain corridor. No other passenger. If you came from the Republic of Ireland, you were subjected and you accepted it as having you were searched more, you were background checked more because you were potentially a threat. Nobody in Ireland had a problem with that. But I heard Muslims complain about 9/11 and I hear people complain about it right now. So I think it's full of bullshit, pardon me. Because I tell you what, if you know that one of yours has committed something, you expect extra attention. If you've nothing to hide, you've nothing to fear. Right? Now, coming to the security side of it, synagogues will not engage unless they absolutely have to, but they will because there are people there. Most synagogues, there's IDF experience in that, and they already know, they're already battle hardened, they already know. And right now, there's a heightened sense of threat to the Jewish community anyway, since this Gaza thing and everything that's going on. So it's no different in my books, but you have an expectation, a probability of higher chances that you are going to be identified as a potential target and you will do it. And you mentioned locations. Locations, traditionally, Jewish communities have voted one particular political voting bloc. That's gone. That's gone. So right now what's happened is if you threaten me, I'm coming for you. The basis of community policing, community security in Israel is one house, one block at a time. You protect your family, then your neighbor, and your neighbor protects you and your family. And that's your Minecraft. That's your Tetris for doing. So the philosophy is here. We haven't suffered enough to understand that. That's the difference. We're not mature enough as regards risk mitigation. We're not mature enough as a nation to accept the fact we learn nothing about 9/11. If you ask a kid now, they don't even know what 9/11 is. Oh, 9/11? Is that 5/11? They do tactical gear. No, 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 that's 9/11, you muppet. Right? They don't know. People's attention span is it's down to a cell phone. So we're wasting our time with this actual trying to promote church security because I tell you what, churches have no intention of fully complying with the regulations that they're bound under. None. Otherwise, they'd have been a pastor or a priest or a bishop, or whatever you want to call them, in a prison somewhere or gone bankrupt. I've never seen one because under the First Amendment, they're protected. They think, no, no, no. If you take money from me, I step onto your premises, there's a duty of care for you to protect me and keep me safe. That's the law. That's the law, not politics. That's the freaking law.
Good point. Excellent point, actually.
I
Okay, guys.
agree
Go
100%
ahead.
with everything my brother said. It's,
Mhm. All right.
it's a no win. But I suspect that something is going to change. America and Americans are going to start feeling the pain.
Yeah, I think so. I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah, they're going to start
Um,
feeling it. So
which is going
I
to be very
agree.
unfortunate. It's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. All right, fellas, we got about 5 minutes left. Anything else you guys want to talk about
I'm
in
open.
general? Just
I think
whatever. Anything?
we covered a good topic tonight, and we were spot
Yeah,
on. Yep.
I think we are.
All right.
I would
Yeah.
I would hope that people think more seriously about the security right now. The 4th of July is coming up, just a matter of 2 weeks' time. People are going to be sensitive to that. We already have stuff lined up by way of we have enhanced security already. We already have. The wind has changed in this country here in relation to awareness, but it still is not good enough. If you're aware of something, you must. If you're aware of a problem, you must do something about it. And
Mhm.
we have to mature as a country and realize nobody is coming, and you're looking after yourself, and
Yeah,
that's the
it's
bottom line.
self-rescue because let me tell you something. You call the police department, you get ridiculed. You know.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. You got to prepare to self-rescue. It's all upon you.
Yeah. Maybe it should be like, there's see something, say something. Maybe it should be see something, say something, do something added into that
Yeah,
concept.
yeah.
Might not be a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay, Rennie, why don't you go ahead and give your closing statements here, if you don't mind?
So
Or, sorry.
I'm glad we're back. I'm glad we're doing this format. Strictly current events. We're staying out of politics.
Yep.
i12GIA. I'm having surgery in about a month and a half. After that, I plan on going full bore into the firearms instruction, first aid, CPR, AED, back to teaching. I got one of these fancy projectors that attached to my new $4,000 laptop that I couldn't get
Nice.
tonight, and that's why I'm working off my fucking iPhone. I feel like
Uh,
it. I feel this big, but uh,
no, you're actually that. Yeah, you got a
yeah.
big head.
Oh, we got a whole host of positive things that are going to be happening for us. Uh, go in the not too distant future. It's going to be positive for us. It's going to be positive for the public, and hopefully we'll be able to enhance ourselves and make people safe and make this world a better place, which we can all thrive and enjoy it and live in peace.
Better place for puppies and children and butterflies and shit. All right, no bad. What you got to say, buddy?
um, Echo everything that the padre has said. I would just say, from this point of view, you have an opportunity every day when you go outside your front door to educate somebody in a passive way without inflaming any passions with anybody. Be a neighbor, be a good neighbor, like Mr. Rogers would say. Literally, in that point would be, if you have some knowledge, pass it on. It's okay to be nice to people. You'd be surprised how much of a response you get. If you're positive, you'll attract positive back to you. You have a duty to yourself and to your country and your community. And it's never been so much more in vogue or in focus as it is right now. What happened overseas is not finished. It's just a lull. It's inevitable. It's gonna break down. So that brought a risk to us here. Politics aside, nobody can deny the reality of what we have now living in the US. And so it is a fact that no one really matters too much until it affects them in their own pocket. It's going to affect you in your own pocket, right? And so your safety, right? Your insurance, your ability to move around freely as an American will be compromised and lost if you don't switch on to what's going on around you.
Sounds like a plan. All right, folks, we're coming up on the end of our show. It's i12GIA, the Ops Report. Now, we're going to be back every Wednesday now at the same time, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And hopefully, things will get back to normal here. We'll get some folks listening, subscribe, and like on YouTube. We're still back there on the original channel, i12GIA. So go check us out. We have the past streams there, and the new streams are going there also. So that's it. As always, give the ones you love a big hug and keep them close, and be prepared to self-rescue because ain't nobody coming to get you but yourself. And we'll see you folks next time. All right. Peace out. Bye, guys. Be safe.